Good afternoon, my dear. Have a great lunch and enjoy the game. What do you think the score will be? I predict 2-0 for Brazil. What's your prediction, my beautiful people? Let's move on, everyone. So, what is Flavio Bolsonaro's strategy? Flavio Bolsonaro, he's in trouble. There's no way. What's his strategy now to buy time? The only thing left for Flavio is to buy time so that he can run in the election and try to fool people. And don't be fooled. It seems that Andre Mendonca might help him with this strategy because Andre Mendonca hasn't yet told the federal police to officially investigate Flavio. He said he will send it to the prosecutor general's office this week, wait for their response, and only then send it to the police. But what do you mean, guys, for God's sake? So it's a strategy. His strategy is to buy time. Why? Because he knows what he did last summer. He knows about the apparently criminal connections with Daniel Volcaro. So what does he need to do? He needs to buy time to see if he can fool people, sweet talk the crowd, and get elected. If he gets elected, then everything gets shelved and protected. So today, Andre Mendonça will become what? The shelver. Just like Augusto Aras. And we can't let that happen. How? What can we do, Andrea Gonçalves? How do we stop this strategy? Speak, show, speak again, show again on social media, because this is bringing real results where Flavio can't hide and can't fool people. So much so that a survey came out. A survey just came out now. Lula gains 8 more percentage points and wins in the first round. A survey came out today. Lula gains 8 more percentage points and wins in the first round. And our fight and our demand are for that. It's for Lula to win in the first round and put an end to this nonsense. I'm going to tell you something. Not even the market wants Flavio anymore, especially with this huge tariff. That's why he desperately offered the entire transition government, if he wins the election, to the Trump administration. Because he knows he needed to stop the huge tariff. They went after it, especially through Eduardo Bolsonaro, to try to make it happen, and they couldn't stop the tariff. Who will suffer most from this huge tariff besides us, the elite and the rich? Who would vote for Flavio? Now they're rejecting Flavio because they know Flavio is more of the same and very little like Bolsonaro. Competente, incompetent, criminal, worthless, and doesn't even know how to represent those he actually represents, which is the Brazilian elite. And it's a huge self-inflicted wound. That's why things aren't going well. Things are tough for him. But what do I think? I think it's not enough. But let's see here. Lindenberg Farias talked about this strategy, trying to buy time, trying to stall, sweet-talking the crowd, fooling everyone, and dragging this out even after the elections. But we're going to show it. And that's it. It's over. Are we going to try to hide the connection and the criminal activities of Daniel Volcaro's mafia with Flavio? We'll show it. It's not a problem. Look here. Pay attention.
Flavio Bolsonaro's defense strategy is to push the story about the Dark Horse movie until after the elections. Look, on May 13th, that audio of Flavio with Volcaro leaked. Big brother, I am and will always be with you. May 13th. Every day I'm pushing, going to the Supreme Court, going to the federal police. Now the news comes out that Minister Andre Mendonça is going to send it to TV, TGR, to open an investigation this coming week. It's already been 45 days. Today is June 28th. At least the federal police's approach seems to be a good one. According to the news in the papers, they're talking about 3 investigations about this money from Volcaro to finance Flavio Bolsonaro's movie. But there's a second one to see how this money was used, because it's in the Ravengate Fund, controlled by Eduardo Bolsonaro. If he saw himself financing Eduardo Bolsonaro's stay and Eduardo Bolsonaro's campaign against Brazil, this is the second line of investigation. And the third line of investigation is about parliamentary amendments, because the production company received money from the São Paulo City Hall and the federal district government. and 4.8 million from parliamentary amendments. The fact is, folks, we have to stay on top of this.
And I want to add two things here that were the same requests both to the production company and to the fund, right? That they organize themselves to provide an accounting to every one of the expenses made as a result of this investment in the film in a transparent way within 30 days.
The fact is that we can't accept any stalling. We have to demand and insist on speed in this investigation. I even appealed a decision by Minister Fachin that concentrated the entire investigation about this film Dark Horse with Minister Andre Mendonça. Look, Minister Andre Mendonça is the rapporteur of the Banco Master scandal. There's more here. This producer, Karina Gama, received 230 million this year. Money from São Paulo City Hall, the federal district government, and congressional earmarks. How is this related to Banco Master? For me, it would be much more appropriate, since it has a connection with parliamentary amendments, to have Minister Flavio Dino as the rapporteur. But let's go, guys. Let's demand it. Let's exercise our right to demand and require an investigation into this scandal that financed the Bolsonaro family and their crimes against Brazil.
That's it, folks. We have to put pressure on them. We have to put pressure on Andre Mendonça. And those are exactly the lines of investigation. The money from Daniel Volqueiro, which went to the movie, the money that went to the Raver Havergate Fund. It went where? Did it go to the movie, or was it to support Eduardo Bolsonaro, to attack our sovereignty, to come with huge tariffs, the application of the Magnitsky Act? How does that work? The other investigation focuses on parliamentary amendments, specifically funds from them that went to the movie. Guys, that's a lot of money. It's too much money for just one movie. Bolsonaro's Pangaré movie. And now we're facing Andre Mendonça's Pangaré, which isn't moving. It's a lot of money and there's no way around it. They'll have to explain and be held accountable. They're going to have to prove where that money went, especially, as I already told you in the 8:30 live from Daniel Volcaro, that it's stolen money. Where did that money go? Because stolen money is a big problem. Which is what, Andre? Laundering it. Launder it so you can use it at the end. And for me, this movie was used as a big front of fronts of a laundromat laundering the money stolen from Daniel Volcaro, where the money was distributed, even maybe very possibly for paying bribes. And that will be investigated. Now we have to put pressure on Andre Mendonça. We have to light a fire under his ass. So he puts the heat on, because if he doesn't put the heat on, we'll turn up the heat here on social media. Put it there, Andre Mendonça. Hey, Andre. But look here who it was. Let's move forward. Do you want the thing? You do, so take it and do it right. Because if not, we're coming after you. There, it's over, because we want justice. Look here, okay? The federal police concluded that Flavio Bolsonaro committed the crime of slander against Lula after investigations and an inquiry opened in April by the federal police, and sent the conclusion of the inquiry. What is this here, huh? Flavio trying to say that Lula, with privileged jurisdiction and I don't know what else, is a terrorist linked to terrorists, to the dictatorship, and so on and so on. Flavio made this post and put Lula there, saying that she was connected to and defended terrorists, basically that. The federal police finished their investigation and stated he committed slander. Where does this go? It goes to the Attorney General's office. And it's the Attorney General's office that will decide whether to file charges or not. Here's the thing, it has to be stopped. Since the Superior Electoral Court is kind of shaky, kind of pathetic, right? The Superior Electoral Court is a circus. Not a circus, Andrea. It's not a circus, it's pathetic. It's kind of mediocre, just like Bolsonaro's mediocre movie. The Superior Electoral Court is mediocre. The federal police must act to prompt the Supreme Court. Because if they let it go, anything will be allowed in this election. There will be fake posts. There will be all kinds of situations. Did you see? Meanwhile, Bolsonaro. Is Bolsonaro going back to jail or not? Well, Alexandre de Moraes has to decide. Look here, okay. Moraes will decide this week whether to send Bolsonaro back to prison. The minister will decide whether Bolsonaro stays at home or returns to prison after the 90-day period expires for a registered pistol. In his name, it was found with 2 security guards. So Alexandre de Moraes should decide this week, okay? Alexandre de Moraes heard from the Attorney General, who claimed he hadn't. Serious offense. Oh, I've never seen a prisoner being treated the way Bolsonaro is being treated, with kid gloves. I've never seen that in my life. I've never seen a prisoner sentenced to 27 years have a pistol. And that not being considered a serious offense, I've never seen that in my life. The prosecutor general said it's not a serious offense. So now Alexandre de Moraes will listen to the lawyer's statements. The lawyers also asked Alexandre de Moraes to recognize that Bolsonaro didn't have bad intentions, so that it wasn't anything like that and so on, and just let it go and keep him under house arrest. Alexandre de Moraes is going to allow it soon. Look, even the prosecutor general isn't pursuing it. That makes it difficult, doesn't it? Give me a break. Just put Bolsonaro in jail already. Put an end to this weird situation. The guy is a prisoner, people. Give me a break. Yeah. Meanwhile, a poll came out today, and Lula almost wins in the first round. Go ahead and put it down. Lula could even win a 4th term in the first round. Here, look. Which poll is it, Central? Which institute is it from? Check it for me. First round, Lula, PT, 42% of voting intentions. And Flavio Bolsonaro with 34% of voting intentions. 34% of voting intentions. Second round, Lula, 47% of voting intentions, and Flavio Bolsonaro, 44% of voting intentions. Nexus BTG. It's from Nexus BTG. First round, pay attention here. Look, Lula with 42%, 8 more percentage points and 1 vote. Lula wins in the first round. We have to work for that. Work hard. And, you know, Flavio isn't even being helped by the Bolsonaros themselves, right? Michelle criticized him this weekend. Did you see? Last week, he criticized him. Then Alan dos Santos comes in. Then Paulo Figueiredo comes in. They're criticizing Michelle. Michelle isn't liking it. Then Damares came in and others joined in to defend Michelle. And things are getting heated in the Bolsonaro clan. And that loses points because Flavio is falling and losing support among evangelicals. I showed you all him at the Divine Eternal Father procession. But is he evangelical? Why is he going to a Catholic event? Well, that's his craziness. So he's losing support among evangelicals and among women. So he's losing support within his own group of Bolsonaro supporters. That's very interesting. That's why he's desperate and lashing out everywhere. And things are getting really heated. And there's another situation where he's also losing support among the elite themselves because of the tariff issue. And Marco Rubio's letter that revealed Flavio Bolsonaro is a candidate for president, not of Brazil, but as a pawn of the United States for interference in Brazil. He said he'd offer the entire transition government to the United States, just so you know. Still, Marco Rubio didn't want it. He humiliated and disrespected Flavio Bolsonaro. What a shame. What a bunch of crooks. The people are like mats, servants to Americans. Go on, back off, devil. So because of all this, he's dropping in the polls. Then the conflict with the evangelicals got worse because of Michelle. All hell is breaking loose because they're targeting Michelle. Paulo Figueiredo said that Damares has become a feminist activist and the deep split within Bolsonarism. The former family minister from Bolsonaro's government became the target of attacks from the digital Bolsonarist family. Why, Andre? Because she stepped in to defend Michelle. Then they went all out attacking her. Damares Alves, who is also evangelical. And to make things worse, look at this. They said she's the pastor's lover. Oh my God. Message exchange on X, Damares and Oswaldo trade barbs. Damares, right? She talked about Paulo Figueiredo and all that. She said, hello, Paulo Figueiredo. Nice to meet you. I'm Senator Damares. I don't think you know me. Let me introduce myself better. I'm that woman who stands up to pedophiles, to the corrupt. I face organized crime head on without fear. I'm that woman who walks the streets in the communities and blah, 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 blah. Then Oswaldo came to defend Paulo Figueiredo and attack her. And all of this because she's defending Michelle Bolsonaro. Then Oswaldo says, Damares, that's a lie. Actually, you're the lover of a married pastor from Recanto das Semas in Brasilia. and one of the most prominent feminists in Brazil. Are you up for a live stream with me? I'm the employee Marco Carvalho. Your employee Marco Carvalho used to steal the gas from the offertory box from the Baptist Church. Philadelphia in Guara. Oh my God, only classy people here. It's the pot calling the kettle black, and all in the name of Jesus. Don't bring Jesus into this. Don't bring Jesus into this. Jesus has nothing to do with this. So they're fighting each other in every possible way. And all of this, I'll say it again, is because Damares stepped in to defend Michelle. Then Eduardo Bolsonaro's and Flavio Bolsonaro's attack dogs went after Damares. Yeah, go mess with those sexist, misogynistic, homophobic people. Yeah, go ahead. That's what happens. They'll come after you all to the end. What do I think? It's not enough. We need to have some shame and know who we hang out with and who we ally ourselves with. Yes, so notice that evil destroys itself, and we help because we show the reality. But it's chaos breaking out in every possible way here among these people. And I don't feel sorry, no. I think, you know what I think? I think it's not enough. Meanwhile, things went wrong. Marco Rubio keeps the tariffs and ignores Flavio Bolsonaro's appeal. Flavio Bolsonaro, guys, was humiliated by Marco Rubio. He was humiliated. Flavio lowered his head, bent over for the United States, and even so, the United States didn't want to grant his request to lower the tariffs. A horrible thing, right? So Flavio is just messing up. He messes up when it comes to the United States, and he ends up being labeled a traitor to the country, just like Eduardo Bolsonaro. He messes up by attacking Michelle. Michelle fought back. So that's the whole situation. And most importantly, the main thing, his involvement with Daniel Borcado's mafia. Look, it even came out on Global News about the investigation into this whole situation here. See? Pay attention, my dear. Pay attention, like the live, the practice.
Natus, the expectation is that 3 lines of investigation will be opened. We prepared a screen here showing what these 3 lines will be. The first one is to investigate the transfers of 61 million made by Daniel Borcado, former owner of Master, at the request of Flavio Bolsonaro. The second is to investigate the possible allocation of part of the funds to support Eduardo Bolsonaro in the United States. The third one aims to investigate the allocation of budget earmarks to organizations linked to the film's production company, according to G1 reporter Reynaldo Turolo, stating that these 3 inquiries are expected to be opened in the coming days by the federal police. Speaking first about this inquiry that aims to investigate whether Eduardo Bolsonaro was funded in the United States, investigators see this as a somewhat more complex case because it requires some cooperation from American authorities. For example, when it comes to, for instance, obtaining access to confidential records involving people who are in the United States, that's why it would be a bit more complex. Now talking about those 61 million raised that were allegedly transferred by Daniel Borcado to finance the movie Dark Horse. At the request of Flavio Bolsonaro, what the federal police intends to investigate mainly is whether Daniel Borcado got anything in return. Or rather, if Flavio Bolsonaro did Daniel Borcado or his team any favors because of this transfer of 61 million reais. And this investigation, the federal police was waiting for the Supreme Federal Court to decide who would be the justice assigned to this case. As you said, Minister Andre Mendonça was chosen, but before that there was an inquiry, and that's because of this. This request for investigation came through a request made by Congressman Lindbergh Farias within the inquiry that led to the conviction of Eduardo Bolsonaro for coercion during the course of the process. He presented this in the inquiry because he believed that Eduardo Bolsonaro also acted internationally to try to finance this film, and then the case would be assigned to Minister Alexandre de Moraes. But before making a statement, Moraes asked the Prosecutor General's office for an opinion. Paulo Gonay, the Attorney General, believed that this transfer in this case would be more related to the investigation involving Banco Master. That's why the case should stay with Andre Mendonça, and then what? The final decision was left to the President of the Federal Supreme Court, Minister Edson Fachin, who spoke out yesterday. He determined then that the case should remain with Andre Mendonça because he is already the rapporteur for the Banco Master investigation. Congressman Lindbergh Farias filed an appeal requesting that the case actually be assigned to Minister Flavio Dino. Minister Flavio Dino is the rapporteur for this third, let's say, this third branch of the investigation, which will deal with this alleged scheme to finance entities linked to the production of the film Dark Horse. In practice, Natuzi, the expectation is that 3 lines of investigation will be opened.
Yeah, but it has to be opened soon, right, guys? It has to be opened soon because for God's sake, for the love of Jesus, it should have already been opened. They should already be investigating. It was in May that Intercept revealed this whole situation. It's been 45 days. It's already been 45 days. So this needs to be investigated. It should have been done yesterday, you know? They'll soon stall and delay, then elections will happen, but there's a catch. Like I said, there's no way around it. If the Supreme Federal Court thing doesn't move forward, we're going to show more and more every day. You can be sure of that. And we are not going to accept this situation. There won't be another Lava Jato 2.0. This won't happen anymore. The truth will come out no matter who it hurts. And Flavio Bolsonaro, to me, he seems more like a partner of Daniel Vorcaro. That's the situation. And all of this needs to be dealt with, okay? So this is a very serious, very grave point from Flavio Bolsonaro. And the other point is this attack on our sovereignty together with the United States government. The United States wants to colonize Brazil again, to steal from Brazil. And he is being supported by the Bolsonaristas, notably by Eduardo Bolsonaro and Flavio Bolsonaro, and we cannot accept that. Sovereignty is not negotiable. And I'm saying this regardless of whether you're right-wing or left-wing, it doesn't matter. Sovereignty, our territory, our Brazil, our family, our world, our life is ours. And there's no one who should interfere. Especially because he has a lot of problems to solve in his own country. And he doesn't solve them. Is he going to solve them here? That's just nonsense, right? What kind of dirty trick is this? Federal Congressman Antonio De Paula gave a warning here about this situation. Pay attention.
The letter from Marcos Rubio to Flavio Bolsonaro, when he makes a hypocritical request for America not to impose tariffs on Brazil. Hypocritical because, in fact, all these tariffs against Brazil were a proposal from the Bolsonaro family against the Lula government, affecting all of Brazil. It was an election-driven proposal. Remember, I won't let you forget that Eduardo Bolsonaro said he doesn't care either way. Whether this place would become a wasteland or not, as long as he could get revenge on his father's tormentors. Therefore, it was never for Brazil. It was always for them, for the Bolsonaro family. That's a fact. That's a fact. Now, what stands out in this letter isn't the fact that Marcos Rubio says he's going to keep these tariffs. We already knew that. What stands out to me is that he thanks presidential candidate Flavio Bolsonaro for making his government's transition available to a North American team. What is this? A presidential candidate making a possible future transition of his government available to another country at the disposal of a North American team. First, Brazilian laws do not allow for such an absurdity. This attack on national sovereignty. Folks, what we are discussing in this election from now on with this madness and this declared subservience of the Bolsonaro family's subservience to Trump. What we are discussing is national sovereignty. Do you understand? National sovereignty. And this issue didn't start with Lula, no. It starts with a clear and veiled threat from the Bolsonaro family. How can you put a government transition under another country's control? That's absurd. This is absurd. So pay attention. Pay attention to where we are heading, regardless of whether you like Flavio or not, whether you like Bolsonaro or not. But look where this family is taking the country. They accuse Lula so much, and I'm not defending Lula here, no. You keep calling me Lula's soldier, but no, I'm a soldier of Brazil and of coherence and truth. They were the ones who accused Lula so much of protecting China and handing Brazil over to Chinese interests, and they never proved it. But we have proof of their subservience to the Americans, and Marcos Rubel's letter makes that very clear.
Then you ask me, but Andre, what's the logic? Why would Flavio Bolsonaro, together with Eduardo Bolsonaro, try to make such a deal? Try to make the deal, right? Because the United States didn't even accept this deal. They said that if Flavio won the elections, the transition government in Brazil would be run by the United States. In exchange, he didn't want the tariff to be applied, this and that, everything they fought to have, which was the tariff, that whole situation, to try to bring Lula down. Instead of bringing him down, it made Lula rise even more. Then they tried to fix the mess and clean up the mess they made. So they made this kind of deal. Then you ask me, but what's the logic behind a deal like this, Andre? For God's sake, there's only one logic. They don't care at all about our sovereignty, about the Brazilian people, about the well-being of our nation. They just don't care. What really, for them, the only thing that matters is getting back to the power of the presidency of the republic, to get back to the gravy train, to get back to the schemes they had apparently with Daniel Vorcaro, to steal, to kill like they did in the genocide during the pandemic, to get away with it. In jail, the only thing that matters to them is that they don't care about anything else. They couldn't care less about Brazil. They want to get back into power at any cost, no matter what it takes, even if it costs our sovereignty, our territory, or our security. It doesn't matter. They want power just for the sake of power. To get away from jail, because they're going to jail. Just like Bolsonaro is in prison, Eduardo Bolsonaro is already convicted. He's going to jail. Flavio Bolsonaro, his time will come too. He's going to jail. So they're desperate to get back to power, to see if they can get away from jail and let the rest go to hell. That's the logic of the Bolsonaro family. And for that, they lie, attack, and do whatever needs to be done. Flavio Bolsonaro is over there in Argentina, right? So he went there to speak in front of Javier Milei's supporters and Javier Milei himself, saying he's going to do the same as Javier Milei. Milei, Argentina, guys, is in total chaos. Argentinians are fleeing Argentina to come to Brazil. Do you remember that story that Brazil was going to become Venezuela and all that and all that? Well, the one that became Venezuela is Argentina. Then he went there and said he would do the same as Javier Milei if he wins the elections. Guys, for God's sake, what the hell is this? After promising submission to Trump, Flavio Bolsonaro said he will align himself with Israel. In Buenos Aires, the senator used an event organized by pro-Israel conservative groups to attack Lula and promise alignment with the regime of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is responsible for the killing of thousands of Palestinians. He also said he'd act like Javier Milei's government. He will govern just like Javier Milei. Javier Milei enacted a labor reform where people will have to work 12 hours a day, where the boss will be able to pay his employee in food. Is that what Brazilians want? What madness is this? Here, look, Tico. Okay. Look here.
I want to acknowledge the person who, together with my father, gave the first big push to this wave. It was President Javier Milei. He was the one who started all of this.
When President Milei took office in Argentina, then he keeps flattering Javier Milei and says that Brazil is worse off than Argentina. By the way, Argentina has never been better than Brazil. Argentinians are coming to Brazil. They're fleeing from Argentina. The situation there is people are eating donkey meat because they can't afford beef. It's becoming like Venezuela there. Then he said he's going to govern like Javier Millet if he's elected. What is he talking about? Specifically, the labor reform they did over there. They're cracking down, whipping the workers' backs. Many are coming to Brazil. They no longer want to live or work there. With the precarious situation and the abuse that's happening there in Argentina. So it's total chaos. These people are a disgrace. Meanwhile, Flavio Bolsonaro and the other Bolsonaro supporting groups are working to block the approval of the amendment to end the 6x1 shift schedule. Put it up there, for God's sake. End the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule already? For God's sake, people. But it looks like things are starting to move. Look here, see? End of scale 6x1. Alcolumbre opens negotiations after a month of paralysis and pressure from Lula's government. The proposal that provides for the end of the 6x-1 scale has been stalled in the Senate since May 28, awaiting a decision from the President of the House, who has called a meeting for this week. Davi Alcolumbre wants protection from Lula's government, but Lula says he won't protect anyone. Davi Alcolumbre was reported by Daniel Volcaro. Daniel Volcaro said he paid $30 million in bribes to Davi Alcolumbre. More than 150 million reais. Then after that, according to Malu Gaspar from Globo, he went to Lula to ask Lula to interfere with the federal police to protect him. And Lula said he wouldn't interfere. So what happened? He switched sides. He put Lula's veto on the sentencing to fall, and it did. In fact, today there's a direct action of unconstitutionality against the sentencing law, which should be voted on in August or September to decide whether there will be sentencing guidelines or not. It's there in the Supreme Court. For now, the law is suspended, but Lula's veto was overturned thanks to Davi Alcolumbre. Thanks to Davi Alcolumbre, for the first time in over 100 years, a nominee for Supreme Federal Court Justice by the President of the Republic was rejected by the Senate, and that nominee was Jorge Messias, an evangelical. There was no reason at all to reject the guy. He even had the profile they like, and they rejected him. Why? Because Davi Alcolumbre was showing power to Lula because he wants protection. And now he is blackmailing, from what everything indicates, the Lula government to approve the action and decide on moving forward with the peace to end the 6x1 6-day work schedule. There has to be pressure. There has to be pressure, everyone. Otherwise, Davi Alcolumbre won't be able to move it forward. This week, he scheduled a meeting with the leadership. What does he have to do? He has to send the bill to the CCJ so that it can be processed in the CCJ. And after all the processing and the subsequent approval, after it passes the CCJ in the special committee, then it needs to be approved in the plenary. If there isn't any processing, there won't be any approval. And who is the only one who can start the process? It's him. The process begins, but he withholds it. He is trying to blackmail the government. The government won't give in, guys. It's just not going to happen. Lula is not Bolsonaro, who interfered in the federal police to protect his sons, especially Flavio Bolsonaro, his allies, brothers-in-law, accomplices, perpetrators, co-perpetrators, and accomplices in crime. Lula is not going to do that. So we have to stay alert to this situation and go out to the streets soon, because we can't. Put it there, end the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule now. And federal police go after them, whoever it is. It doesn't matter if they're right wing, left wing, it doesn't matter. Go after the criminals, especially the biggest criminal. Who? From all indications, Flavio Bolsonaro. Much love. Smash that like button and tell me, Brazil, what's the score? For me, it's 2-0. And for you? For me, it's 2-0 Brazil. Smash that like button, like, comment, and share, and put your score prediction there. Kisses. See you next time. Let's watch the game.